Hey, it's Aaron, and I've tried to record this video probably 500 different times today, and I keep running into minor problems that make it just completely impossible for me to film. I've been rained out twice, and then just a few moments ago, I was attacked by roughly 9 million teeny tiny little insects that are still flying around me as we speak. So hopefully that's not too distracting in the background of this video, because all I wanted to do today was talk to you about Bernie Sanders and his workplace democracy plan. Now, the workplace democracy plan, when you hear those words, immediately in your head, if you're a Marxist or a socialist or an anarchist like myself, you think to yourself, does that have anything to do with Richard Wolff's idea of democracy at work? Basically giving employees the ability to vote for their boss or their supervisor instead of just having those positions arbitrarily appointed by a CEO based on how much money that person makes, or if they happen to be that CEO's son. Well, unfortunately, no. Bernie Sanders' plan has nothing to do with that, but it is still incredibly interesting and extremely important. Basically, the workplace democracy plan works to roll back a lot of the loopholes that were created in the wake of the New Deal after the FDR administration way back in the 1920s and 30s. Back in those days, workers fought incredibly hard to get an immense amount of rights. They were given collective bargaining rights. They were given a shorter work week. They were given a minimum wage and got rid of child labor law, not got rid of child labor laws, instituted child labor laws and got rid of child labor. A lot of things that helped the workers happened during those times, and unfortunately, they have been walked back or rolled back in that time period from then until now, basically creating an immense amount of loopholes that allow corporations and capitalist industries to take advantage of workers and exploit them. So a couple of those loopholes that the Bernie Sanders plan works to eliminate is right to work for less laws, which basically make it so the law itself makes it so you don't have to pay your union dues if you work at a company that has a union. Even though that idea sounds good, right? You wouldn't initially have to pay the union dues for your union. That would make your paycheck a little bit bigger. But unfortunately, it negates the whole idea of a union, being that if you pay that little bit to the union, those union dues, then the union will fight for you in the long run, and you can get an enormous amount of money out of it eventually. They can fight for better pay, shorter hours, longer vacations, those sorts of things. So right to work for less laws are basically shooting employees directly in their own foot. Another thing that it eliminates is right to fire laws. So basically right now in a lot of United States a lot of states in the United States, they're able to fire anybody for any reason at any time whenever they want. And that's because a lot of these right to fire laws are in place. And it makes it impossible for employees to have stability in their world. They never know when they're going to be fired or for what reason. If the industry starts to slow down, they lose their job. They had no idea that it was coming. And it also, this Bernie Sanders plan, also works to solve the healthcare problem that they have in the United States by increasing the ability for employees to get healthcare through their employers in the short term, while also in the long term allowing those employees to eventually transfer over to the Medicare for All bill. So in the short term, they would have some sort of arrangement with their employer so they could get Medicare through, they would get healthcare through their employer, and then eventually that would switch over and they would get Medicare through Medicare for All. And the surplus, if there is one that's created through that merger, would end up being redistributed to all of the employees. It's a fantastic idea, and this is why I really love a lot of what Bernie Sanders does. Is he not only pays attention to the short term, he also pays attention to the long term, and he institutes policies that can help both in the short term and in the long term, because what he really cares about is the people. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Bernie Sanders is an undercover communist and that he's a great guy or that he does everything correct or that everybody should support him. I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is that I do support a diversity of tactics. And even though I'm an anarchist, even though I believe that representative democracy and that sort of thing doesn't actually function properly, and if democracy actually worked in the West, it would have been made illegal a long time ago. Even though I believe those things, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad idea for us to support Bernie Sanders in whatever way that we possibly can. If that means voting for him, absolutely. If that means just basically talking about his ideas and his policies and making them known to more people, then that is what we should do as well. It's not because I think voting is going to solve anything. Quite the contrary. I think voting won't do a goddamn thing. But what it does do is allows us to have some sort of record, first of all, that so many people really, really like Bernie Sanders, but it also allows us to bring Bernie Sanders and ideas that he has into the mainstream. And that's basically the biggest thing that I like about him, is that maybe he doesn't have the ability to change the entire system from the inside. Maybe every one of his plans aren't the best in the world, and they could definitely go further. But it at least opens people's minds up and opens their eyes up to a different way of doing things, to basically giving those people the ideas, or at least giving them a little bit of a taste of how some socialism might actually be. We haven't had any form of real socialism, or at least in any real sense, since way back in the 1920s and 30s. Like I said, ever since then, it's been stamped out, it's been gotten rid of, and it's been demoralized and destroyed ever since that time. So giving the people a little bit of a taste of what it feels like to actually have, community and unity and not have to constantly worry about where am I going to get my next meal from? Am I going to stub my toe and have to spend my entire life savings on a doctor? It eliminates those problems and allows people to get immediate solutions. So I think that all of that is really important. I literally just ate a bug. I think all of that stuff is really important. I think that supporting Bernie Sanders when we can is really important. And even though the revolution hopefully will happen like within the next 2 days, that's my hope. Probably by Monday, there's probably going to be a revolution. But if there isn't, and we still haven't achieved one at that point, then voting for Bernie Sanders, making sure that we have those situations in place where we can help people immediately, alleviate immediate stress, doing all of those things is extremely important, because we don't need to be any more accelerationist than we already are. We already have the big orange bastard in the White House. We don't need to accelerate things even more and make even more people suffer, because, well, we already see them suffering every single day. We have literal concentration camps. So like I said, I like to think about a diversity of tactics. That means voting for Bernie Sanders. That means talking about those policies. But most of all, that means direct action. And of course, you know my old school rhetoric. I say it almost in every video. You have to get out there. You have to get politically active. You have to join any kind of union group, any kind of socialist, anarchist, communist group, anything like that, any protests, any sit-ins, walkouts. It doesn't matter what it is. If there's a demonstration going on near you, find out somehow to get a part of it, to find some way to become a part of it, grab that microphone and start telling people your message, because that's what we need right now. We need to change people's minds. We need to be using direct action, but we also need to be using a diversity of tactics. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope that this video was good enough. If you do get a chance, check out my Patreon. Every dollar does help fund this show. And thanks for watching.